Right now, I'm challenging myself to see if I can make 128 Regulation H teams that are each different from one another over the course of 128 days. Why 128, you might ask? At the end of the 128 days, we're going to do something special where we battle every team against each other in a single elimination bracket to see which team emerges on top. There will be some competitively strong teams, there will be some gimmick teams, and there will be some probably a good number of goofs and gaffs in there, so if you want to follow through to the end, subscribe so that you can keep up with each day. But without further ado, let's move on to day 34. Alright everybody, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are doing a relatively normal team today where we just have a lot of Pokemon that are good, and some of them I haven't gotten to feature yet. The main one that I haven't gotten to feature yet is Staraptor, and I kind of built this team revolving around Staraptor, and I think Staraptor has a lot of good things that it can do in this format specifically, but I mean, most of this is just general team building for Pokemon that I think are good right now in the format, so let's go ahead and dive right into Staraptor itself. And if you don't know about Staraptor, it can do quite a few different things in the format, as both of its abilities are pretty viable, as Intimidate is always good, but we're going to be using the Reckless ability, which makes it so that all of our attacks with Recoil have a 1.2 times power, so we're going to be getting a 1.2 times boost on both our Brave Bird and our Double Edge, which are very good stab options. And then for typing / coverage, we have the close combat, just because fighting type coverage is really good right now with all the Archaludons running around, and we have Terra fighting in order to even further boost the power of our close combat, and we just have the U-turn in case we want to pivot out into one of our other Pokemon. And with the Choice Band, we are going to be absolutely smashing everything for as much damage as we can possibly get with our Staraptor. Next up, we got the Volcarona, and this Volcarona isn't too complex. It's just your normal 2 stabs and the Heat Wave and Bug Buzz, and then we have the Quiver Dance, and we're mostly tanky, so we're going to be using the Leftovers item in order to get a lot of good health recovery over time, and we're using Terra Dragon because that negates a lot of our weaknesses, and we're Flame Body because ain't nobody running Swarm. But Flame Body has the nice 30% chance of at least giving a burn to a Pokemon that makes contact with a Volcarona, and if we get it on the turn that we Terra and we resist the hit, then we're going to be much better off. Next up, we got Hisuian Samurott, who I like Samurott a lot, mostly just because I'm a Gen 5 person. But Hisuian Samurott does have a good bit to add with its Sharpness ability, which means that all of our slicing moves are going to be powered up by 1.5 times, and all of our moves are slicing moves, as we're going to be running the Night Slash and the Razor Shell, both really good stab damage moves, and we have the Sacred Sword, which is good type coverage, but it also allows us to ignore the opponent stat changes, so we can cut through a lot of things with Sacred Sword, and we're Clear Amulet so that we're not getting intimidated. And Terra Poison is just nice because it, again, negates a lot of our weaknesses, and it gives us some resistances to things that we were previously weak to. Next up, we're going to be rocking Sneasler, and this Sneasler is going to be our first Grassy Seed Unburden Sneasler, where we've been using Unburden in a lot of uncharacteristic ways in order to get off the Unburden previously, with like Power Herb and Air Balloon and things like that. We're just going Grassy Seed this time because that's the most reliable way that you activate your Unburden ability. And in case you don't know what Unburden does, for whatever reason, it doubles your speed upon your item activating, and since Grassy Seed will activate the instant that Grassy Terrain is set up, and we have Rillaboom, that means that we can always just get that instant speed boost with Sneasler, and it's very handy. As well as we have good stab options in the Dire Claw, and Dire Claw's 50% chance to sleep, poison, or paralyze a foe is absolutely busted. It's crazy to me that it's 50%, not like 30% like Tri-Attack is, especially when you're including sleep in Dire Claw. But we also have the close combat, just for doing a lot of good fighting type damage, and we also have the coaching, since we have a good number of physical attackers on this team, and even the Pokemon that aren't physical attackers really value that defense boost. And lastly, we just have the Fake Out, just because Fake Out is always good in doubles, and we're Terra Ghost so that we're not getting faked out ourselves. Next up, we got Rillaboom, and Rillaboom is going to be our Grassy Terrain setter, and for this Rillaboom, I wanted to focus a lot in our Grass-type damage, so we're going to be using Mirror Seed Rillaboom with the Terra Grass in order to really give us that Grass burst damage, and we also have the Grassy Glide Wood Hammer, which most of our Rillabooms run. We also have the U-turn to enable our pivoting, and Fake Out just because it's Fake Out. And lastly on the team, I decided to swap in a little bit of support in the Electabuzz, and since Electabuzz is not a fully evolved Pokemon, it means that we can run the Eviolite in order to make Electabuzz very, very tanky, and our support moves on Electabuzz are going to be Electro Web, which gives us the ability to spread at lower speed. We also have damage boosting in the form of Helping Hand, and we have Follow Me, most importantly, to be redirecting attacks into Electabuzz. And lastly, we have the Taunt, and since we are Vital Spear Electabuzz, we won't be falling asleep with Electabuzz, and we can even redirect attacks that would normally cause our other Pokemon that don't want to fall asleep into Electabuzz so that they just end up doing nothing for the turn. And with Terra Dark, we won't be getting Prankster taunted, but we probably won't use that one too often. So yeah, that's the basis of the team. Let's get into some battles. So we're looking at a Galarian Weezing team with Neutralizing Gas because they have Slaking, and they have a lot of speedy stuff in the Talonflame that can set their Tailwind for them, and they have Choice Band Meowscarada that would do a lot of damage into a lot of our Pokemon, and also Garchomp is just good attacking into a lot of our Pokemon, and they have Earthquake, which makes it harder to redirect things with Electabuzz. So I end up leading Electabuzz and Volcarona, and the opponent ends up leading Talonflame and Garchomp, which is not a great lead for us because they can really just afford the Earthquake with Garchomp since we don't have a real way to pressure Garchomp right now. So I'm just protecting Volcarona, seeing what's going to happen. They decide Brave Bird into Volcarona, and they go for the Earthquake with Garchomp, and Electabuzz tanks it pretty okay, considering that's a super effective hit, and we at least get some Electro Web damage into Talonflame, but it's Cover Cloak, so we don't get the speed drop. So I decided to swap in Rillaboom and then Terra on this turn, but they kind of read that with Tailwind Talonflame, as Earthquake isn't going to do too much damage since now we're on grassy terrain, and we do get this speed up. And on this next turn, I hope that Talonflame can take an attack. They decide to burn Rillaboom with the Will-O-Wisp, but we can't take the attack from Garchomp, and it just goes up with Dragon Claw. And we do a lot of damage to ourselves with that Wood Hammer on Rillaboom, and we're just kind of struggling for positioning. So at this point, I just kind of want information. They end up Will-O-Wisping into Samurott here, but we try to Wood Hammer Garchomp again, and we Razor Shell Talonflame, and of course that KOs Talonflame. But I wanted to see what else they had in the back so that we can address it. And they do have Meowscarada in the back, which is good to know, as Staraptor will probably have some more play, since nothing that they brought could really deal with Staraptor that well, and we end up just U-turning into Meowscarada, and we see that that would not OHKO Meowscarada if it's Grass Dark, or at least with the U-turn damage that we just did, because we were burned. But if we're not burned, then we can definitely OHKO it with the U-turn. Garchomp is just going to Earthquake into the field, and we're just kind of uselessly Night Slashing into Umbreon here. And I tried a Helping Hand with Samurott just to see how much burned damage we can do into Garchomp with the Razor Shell, and it looked like we did enough damage that we, outside of burn, we still wouldn't 2-KO the Garchomp with the Helping Hand boosted Razor Shell. So we had a pretty decent amount of information in this game one that I use in the next two games, but this is just going to be kind of boring because we're just kind of waiting to die at this point. Foul Play is going to take out Samurott. We saw how much the burned Sacred Sword did into Samurott, or did into Umbreon, which normally it would 2-KO the Umbreon with the Sacred Sword, since Umbreon is pretty physically tanky. Lastly, we take ourselves out with the Grassy Glide. Okay, so I figured my adjustment for this game was going to be leading Staraptor, since they didn't really get to see a lot of what Staraptor could do. And who else did I leave with Staraptor? I led Rillaboom, okay, because I wanted the grassy terrain up immediately. They decided to lead Garchomp Umbreon, though, which I was pretty fine with. Garchomp is faster than Staraptor, but I don't think it could have taken it out in one Dragon Claw. And we get to just Brave Bird into Garchomp to immediately take it out, which is nice. And we U-turn into Sneasler, so even if they did bring in Weezing here on this next turn, we can activate our Burden ability, or at least we can activate our Grassy Seed on the well, I guess we could do that even if Weezing wasn't on the field, but we get to activate our Burden ability right now. As Umbreon was Mirror Herb, so it gets to copy the defense boost, which is a little annoying. We're going to have to deal with that later, because we have Volcarona in the back. And they just decide to fall on Brave Bird into Sneasler, but since we have the defense boost, we get to live that attack as we critical hit into the Talonflame, but I don't think that crit mattered just because Sneasler has so much attack. And we Brave Bird into Staraptor for what damage we can get, and Staraptor takes the Foul Play. But Umbreon's pretty low at this point. They only have 2 Pokemon left, and one of those Pokemon in the back is Meowscarada, who decides to Terastallize into Rock. And I side coaching into Volcarona, thinking that they were going to, I think, Sucker Punch with their Meowscarada, but they didn't do that. They just full on went for Terra Rock, which I guess I should have Terra Dragon in this scenario, because they could have just Terra Rocked into Volcarona right now, but they decided to Terra Blast Sneasler for whatever reason, but that allows us to get off
the Heat Wave with Volcarona as they moonlight with Umbreon, and we still have the Rillaboom in the back, which can, now that Meowscarada is Terra Rock, we can handle Meowscarada with a single Grassy Glide. So even if they did Rock-type move into Volcarona, we would probably still be fine, as we could use Rillaboom and Sneasler to overpower Umbreon. But now that we still have Volcarona, we can do good Wood Hammer damage into Umbreon with our Terra Grass, Wood Hammer, and Bug Buzz is going to finish up the KO into it. So I wasn't quite sure what the adjustment from the opponent was going to be. Maybe them leading Talonflame and Garchomp again at the start would have been their adjustment, but we're going to lead Staraptor and Electabuzz this time, since I was pretty confident they wouldn't lead Garchomp, since Staraptor could just KO it in one hit. And they decided to do Slaking Weezing, so we get to Brave Bird into Weezing, but that doesn't KO it by just not enough damage, as they get to high horsepower Slaking, and that does a lot of damage into Electabuzz, and they taunt Staraptor, maybe believing that Electabuzz was going to live. Slaking is going to protect this turn, and Weezing is also going to protect this turn, just to avoid the Rillaboom fake out opportunity, but now we can definitely get rid of Weezing, which means that Slaking is going to start loafing around after this turn, as Rillaboom gets up the grassy terrain, and they do knock off into Staraptor, which is going to get rid of Staraptor, but Staraptor got rid of the Weezing, which is the most important thing at this point. And we would hammer into Slaking, but that doesn't take it out, unfortunately, despite all the grass-type damage that we're trying to do. But it is within Grassy Glide range, but it is going to take a loafing around turn. I Terra Ghosted because I really didn't want to lose Sneasler here with its defense buff, and I thought that we could take out the Talonflame, but it leaves it at 1% health, which is super unfortunate as Rillaboom gets taken down, but we're going to Dire Claw into Slaking, and then the Will-O-Wisp into Sneasler with Talonflame, and the mon they have in the back is Meowscarada, which they Terra Rock with, but Terra Rock is still weak to close combat, so we get the close combat, but that drops our defense boost, and they Brave Bird into us, but that's not enough damage, and the Talonflame dies instantaneously from the Brave Bird because it only had 1 HP left. So a pretty close last game. If we didn't have Sneasler there in the back terrestrializing into Ghost, then we probably would have lost it, but because we were unburdened and just able to do enough damage across the field, we definitely had that one. Also, Staraptor at the beginning created a really good opening by dealing all that damage into Weezing. Okay, so here's a match that I just had where my computer was lagging out kind of badly, so I'm just going to recap the match. They have a lot of Trick Room stuff here, and also their Sneasler is like a setup Sneasler with Focus Sash, so that's definitely something that we can't undermine the value of. So I decided to lead Electabuzz and Samurott because that's a good lead into pretty much all of their leads. They led Incineroar and the Sneasler here, and I decided to protect the Samurott because I figured a Fake Out would go into it, but they decided to flat out go for the Swords Dance, and we would have broken the Sash there and made Sneasler slower than Samurott more than likely with the Electro Web, but we missed the 95% accurate Electro Web, which really stinks. So now we're definitely on the back foot, as Incineroar decides to go Terra Water and Sneasler protects, and I decide to follow me with Electabuzz because we need damage into Sneasler, but they read that and they get the Flare Blitz into Electabuzz, knocking it out, so we can't super safely get rid of Sneasler's Focus Sash at this point, and they make the correct play, which is swapping in Indeedee in order to cancel out the Fake Out, and then just getting the Dire Claw into Rillaboom, as Razor Shell comes out into Sneasler, and it doesn't proc the Focus Sash, it just brings it down to 1% health, which is kind of strange, but Indeedee goes for the Follow Me, and it redirects a Dire Claw, but Dire Claw paralyzes at least, which if it paralyzed in this next turn, we would have been in a better spot, but no, the Dire Claw is still going to come out into Indeedee, and we at least take the close combat now that we poisoned on Samurott, but we lost so many resources defeating Sneasler that the Hatterene and Incineroar in the back is going to be enough here, because we have to double into Hatterene since it's choice specs and has the ability to just click Expanding Force right now on side terrain, and they full on Flare Blitz into Sneasler, which is going to take it out, and the Night Slash is just barely not going to do enough damage into Incineroar, which is massively unfortunate, as they wouldn't have gotten to eat their berry when they're dead. But I figured that missing the Electro Web on that first turn is not super unlikely, so I'm just gonna do the same lead as before, as they decided to flat out lead Indeedee this time, which I'm pretty okay with, because we can just use Electabuzz to follow me, and they do get to Swords Dance with Sneasler, but we're just going to Night Slash fall on into Indeedee, who I think was going for Trick Room at that point, but this time they really bring Gastrodon to the game, which it makes things a little bit more complicated, because now we can't just use Razor Shell into Sneasler, and they technically double into Electabuzz there because we follow meted away. Now we can bring in Rillaboom in order to gain terrain control for the rest of the game, and they double protect because they don't want to get hit by the Fake Out, but also Gastrodon gets some free heals here. And at this point, I kind of have to make the choice or the read what to attack. So I get the Terra Poison off with Samurott here, as I decided to double attack into the Sneasler to see if we could take it out. They get the Para, which is super annoying on Samurott, because they Ice Beam into Rillaboom, which doesn't take it out here. But another Grassy Glide would take out Sneasler or Gastrodon at this point. But Gastrodon uses its Terra Ice here in order to not die to the Grassy Glide. As I predicted that they would protect here, but just in case they didn't, I wanted to try and take them out. But Ice Beam is going to take out Rillaboom here. But thankfully we have Sneasler in the back, and now that we have Grassy Terrain, we get our defense boost, and Sneasler's going to go for another Protect, as they just double protect out the Fake Outs here, and Samurott takes its Paraturn right now, so the RNG is kind of in our favor right now. And I'm not super scared of the Sneasler because we can just close combat into it since we're faster than it, since it's not on burden, and we can just Sacred Sword the Gastrodon, thankfully, because Samurott, while being slowed, is still faster, and all they have left is Hatterene, who doesn't have its expanding force, so we're not intimidated this time, so we get to just full on Dire Claw into the Hatterene to take it out this time. But if Samurott got poisoned and we didn't get to take it out, then it would have been a kind of awkward. Samurott hopefully hits through the paralysis. Okay, last game, and again, I really don't see any point in changing up my leads, but they decided to bring Garganacl this time, and I'm kind of predicting that they have Gastrodon in the back again in order to try and bait the Razor Shell. But this first turn goes pretty well for us, as we get the speed drop into both Pokemon here, and they just Sulk here into Electabuzz, who Electabuzz is kind of doing okay at this point. They bring in Incineroar, which is a great thing for us because they protected Sneasler, but I wasn't attacking Sneasler this turn because I thought it would just kind of do useless out things. So we get to full on Sacred Sword into Incineroar in order to do massive damage into it, as they swap in Garganacl here for whatever reason, but I'm just making sure Samurott isn't taking unnecessary damage, and we're getting good speed drops with Electabuzz right now, as Electabuzz is going to go down this turn, but Electabuzz going down this turn means that we get to bring in Sneasler, and the Garganacl is Terra Dark, so it really doesn't have a way out of the close combat by Sneasler, so that's what we do here, as they probably wanted to protect the Fake Out from Sneasler again, but we didn't go for it that turn. As now Sneasler kind of just has free reign to just Dire Claw into whatever it wants to, and that'll start picking up KOs, and the Night Slash from Samurott is even picking up KOs, and since they set up Psychic Terrain, they cannot Fake Out with their Incineroar, and all they have left is an 81% health Sneasler in the back, so at this point, the game's pretty much over. So here we have another pretty unique spread of Mons here. They have Wheezing again, but their Wheezing is actually Levitate and more of a Disruption Wheezing rather than getting rid of abilities. But they also have Dragonite, who nothing on this team other than like Staraptor and kind of Sneasler can deal with. So we're, especially like Hisuian Electrode, I only realized this after the first turn, but the Hisuian Electrode has Discharge, so my initial lead of Staraptor and Electabuzz is not as good as I think it is here. They also have Tauros for the Intimidate, which is, Intimidate is not handy on this team. They immediately go for the Terra Normal with Electrode, but I just wanted Terra fighting Staraptor here so that we would not die to Discharge. They decided to swap in Rhyperior in order to not take discharge damage on Tauros, and we get the Double Edge into Electrode, which takes it out, but the Aftermath in combination with our recoil damage is going to cause Electrode to go down, and Electabuzz is just uselessly electrowebbing into that, but Porygon is revealed in the back, and I figured we can taunt Porygon to keep it from setting up Trick Room, and Razor Shell is just going to take out Rhyperior in one hit, so that's a really good turn for us, as we still have Electabuzz, so now we can redirect any damage that might come from the Tauros into the Samurott. Tauros just decides to protect on this turn though, as Electabuzz just following any damage. They do crit us with the Terra Blast, but even the crit Terra Blast doesn't do too much damage into us because of our investment, and the Razor Shell does good damage into Tauros, who is Rocky Helmet, and Rocky Helmet damage is pretty notable. But it's not enough chip, and since we have Sacred Sword on Samurott and a whole Pokemon in the back, which I believe was Sneasler at this point, this battle is just kind of over. Okay, so I figured for my opponent's adjustment, they should really end up bringing Dragonite this game. So I led Electabuzz and Sneasler, kind of hoping that we could do some early disruption to the Dragonite, but they decided to do the same leads as last time, but they swapped out Wheezing immediately, which I wanted to Fake Out and then Electroweb in order to get some decent damage into the Electrode, but they decided to Will-O-Wisp with Tauros instead, which is super putting Sneasler down a lot, and we need Sneasler to beat Dragonite later. We do get a Poison on Tauros, which is the worst one to get, and they crit Electabuzz here, which is pretty unfortunate because now that forces Electabuzz to be 2-hit KO'd by the close combat. And Sneasler's just going to take some mild flamethrower damage from the Weezing, but it does kind of push us into 2-hit KO range from the flamethrower as they follow me, and we're just going to close combat Tauros for as much damage as we can get here, hoping that would be enough with the poison to KO it, but they get another crit with close combat, which means their previous crit from close combat didn't matter as much. This flamethrower is going to cause the Weezing to KO Sneasler here, and now we're in a 2v4 scenario, which I don't really like. But we get to bring in Rillaboom and Samurott here, and I figure I might as well just fake out Tauros so that it dies, even though we're going to take Rocky Helmet damage. And we missed the Razor Shell with Samurott, which is super unfortunate, which means that we can't KO Weezing next turn, because if we had gotten the Razor Shell damage into Weezing, the Wood Hammer would have ended up KOing Weezing next turn, so we would have had an easy way to deal with that. And, I mean, Dragonite is here, and it is Silk Surf, but it's not Choice Band, so I don't fear the Dragonite super much at this point, but Weezing gets to Will-O-Wisp into Rillaboom here, so all around not great times. Try Night Slashing into Dragonite, but it protects as Weezing gets the next Will-O-Wisp into Rillaboom, being 100% accurate on those Will-O-Wisp because, well, of course they are. But we tried to Wood Hammer into Weezing in order to take it out, and I hoped that they were going to Extreme Speed into Samurott, but they decided to just Ice Spinner into Rillaboom, and that gets rid of our terrain, and we only have Samurott left in the back at this point, so we're kind of going to lose to Electrode no matter which way you put it. We get Samurott to Terra Poison here, just because I want to see how much an Electro-type move does to Samurott, and Samurott takes it exactly one less, because it does 51%. So even if we did lead Samurott into Electrode, we don't have great chances of dealing with the discharge, even if we were using Electabuzz to make it spread damage. But in this battle, I figured that they were going to be more aggressive with Dragonite, so I decided to lead Volcarona, since that kind of keeps them from being able to like safely Extreme Speed, because they have a pretty good chance to burn. We follow me with Electabuzz here, and they decide to go for the Discharge play, but Volcarona gets to go for the Heat Wave play. And we take the Discharge pretty well, and the Heat Wave is going to be able to KO Electrode because Electrode's pretty squishy there, and at this point they bring in Dragonite, and I figure I might as well try to roll for the burn chance on both Pokemon, since we can at least get off the Heat Wave, but we do get the burn on Rhyperior, which is pretty nice, but they crit the Rock Slide in return. Not that that crit mattered, I don't think. It's just kind of lucky enough that we got the burn, but now we can bring in Sneasler to start dealing damage into Dragonite, hopefully, as we can Terra Ghost and helping hand with Electabuzz, since I was pretty sure that they were going to go for the Extreme Speed now. They did swap in Tauros to get the Intimidate, but the Extreme Speed is not going to do any damage, and the Dire Claw, we crit the Dire Claw into Dragonite, which is super helpful, but it looks like it still would have been a 2-hit KO without the crit. Kind of hard to tell, but if we had gotten any of the Dire Claw effects onto Dragonite, then we would be super fine. And we get just Electro Web with Electabuzz for the rest of the damage here, and that decreases the speed of Tauros. And now it is Rhyperior and Tauros versus Rillaboom and Sneasler, and Rhyperior is Assault Vest, so it can't protect, so we can just Grassy Glide into that slot. And now that Sneasler has its defense boost, the Tauros has to crit it in order to win. We do enough damage with Grassy Glide and Dire Claw, so that Grassy Glide gets to finish it off next turn, as Rillaboom gets finished off by the Rocky Helmet, but Sneasler would have easily been able to clean up there. Alright, and that was the Staraptor team, even though it's more of a general team, but in this team, I feel like Dragonite, as we kind of saw, does replace a lot of Staraptor's roles in this format. Also because Dragonite can be inner focus and you don't have to waste your ability on trying to get good damage, but Staraptor still has its own. I mean, the pivoting with U-turn we didn't really get to use, but it is still nice to have. So there is a usage case for Staraptor, you just kind of have to be careful, because it's kind of easy for Staraptor to get overwhelmed, since it does so much damage. It's really not super fast and can get outsped by a lot of things. But that's going to be it for this video, so thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, maybe consider leaving a like on the video, and even consider subscribing, because both of those things will help me out an absolute ton, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.